Okay, the final section on Module 1 was working together. So this is understanding that the human brain is actually a social brain. We don't exist in isolation. We exist in the systems we live within and work within. So therefore, we need to factor in that the brain reacts or responds to its environment. Ultimately, also us. As leaders. So the social brain talks about, really simply that there's kind of two parts to the brain. There's the threat side and then there's the reward side. So the threat part of the brain, this is your fight or flight. So for example, for some people, the simple 2 words performance review can activate the threat part of their brain. And then once they're in that fight or flight threat part of their brain, they'll start to think, feel and behave in certain ways that perhaps won't be so helpful, if that makes sense. And then the reward part of the brain, this is the brain that we want to activate in our people. This is the part of the brain that makes us feel happy and safe. So this is where your psychological safety comes in. So this is the part of the brain we want to constantly activate. So that means as leaders, we have to be really careful about the language that we use. The language that we use and how we do things, and constantly asking ourselves, okay, with this person or with this team, could I potentially be activating the threat part of the brain or the reward part of the brain? And what's my goal here? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to achieve? So the social brain talks about a model called the DRIVE model. So DRIVE stands for direction. So always providing people with clear direction helps to activate that reward part of the brain, especially when you're going through change, initiatives. If you don't have clear direction, you will activate that threat part of the brain, no problemo. You can do that very, very quickly. So providing direction is providing certainty. Relationships, people need to feel like they belong to a group. As I said, we're social creatures, right? And if we are outcast or not part of a group, that will make us, or that will activate essentially our threat part of our brain. So it's really watching out as a leader for the different subgroups that you have within your teams. And are they people isolated or on the outside? Because this could be affecting their brain, ultimately how they work. If your threat brain is activated all the time, then you will not be productive. I can guarantee you that. The next part is input. So this is about having control or choice over one's environment and outcomes. So we know that autonomy is really, really important. If it's taken away from us, that could activate our threat brain. You just look at COVID, right? When we were all locked down, our autonomy was taken away from us. Then everyone rushed off to the supermarket and bought toilet paper. That's your threat brain being activated. Value. So this relates to our perceived, a perceived importance or self-worth is probably the better word. So it's really important that we feel like we're adding value. If we don't, then again, our threat brain will be activated. So you see this quite a bit with people who are in the wrong jobs. Where they don't feel like they're adding value, and then they start to make even more mistakes and they look even worse. That's why it's really important that we get the right people on the right seats on the bus as a leader, because if someone is in the wrong seat, we could be affecting their perceived value, which will in turn impact on their threat response. And we want to activate their reward part of their brain. And lastly, equity. So this is very important in terms of things being fair and just. Again, if we feel that something's not right or something's unfair, that'll activate the threat brain, and then you'll get that threat response. So a few things to think about in terms of, what part of the brain do you want to activate in your team? Really, really important, because we know if you activate the threat part of the brain, you are going to get people who are essentially unhappy, on guard all the time, and doing things to basically defend themselves, because in their brain, all their brain sees is that a tiger's running after them trying to eat them. So even though it might be just a performance review or a colleague or what have you, but the brain still sees it as a threat and will act accordingly. So I guess, what type of leader do you want to be? What type of brain do you want to, what side of the brain do you want to activate? All right, I'll leave you to it.